Hey, welcome everyone to our April 2026 Vision Talk. If we haven't met before, I'm Simon Benham, Senior Pastor of Kerith Community Church, and I'm joined by Callum Field, our Operations Director. So Callum, why don't you tell everyone a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Callum Field. I've been Ops Director at Kerith for just over 2 years now, but I've been on staff coming up for 10.
Wow.
So came in as part of the production team, and then took on some of the estates management, and then took on the full operations, which, for those that don't know, is safeguarding, HR, finance, production teams, and then our estates management. And I'm part of the Farnborough community, which is where we are at the moment.
Fabulous. Tell us a little bit about your family as well.
Excellent, brilliant wife, Debs. And I've got a 8, nearly 9-year-old daughter, Felicity, and then Jessie, who is 6. So yeah, it's a good gang. They're a good gang.
They are a very good gang. And as our estates manager, where the heck are we?
Yes,
People what this site is.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a view a lot of people wouldn't have seen before. So we are upstairs in our Farnborough building in an area which no one has had access to since we bought it. So
we're actually allowed here.
Well, you have had to sign that waiver.
Yeah, I did.
To say that you will not touch or look at anything, and hopefully we won't fall through the floor on camera today. But yes, this is one of the upstairs rooms that has been abandoned. It was in very bad condition when we took it on, so we haven't used it. But I think in a bit we're going to give a bit of an update about what this space will be.
What we're going to do in this room.
Yeah.
And this will look different, hopefully, by the end of this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I want to start by just reminding people of the vision talk I brought at the start of the year. And I spoke from the prophet Isaiah. And the prophet Isaiah there encourages the people. It says this: enlarge the place of your tent, stretch your tent curtains wide, do not hold back. Lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, for you'll spread out to the right and to the left. Your descendants will dispossess nations and settle in their desolate cities. And I think what we were sensing as a team at the start of this year, that we've been in a season where everything has felt really tight. And that's for a variety of reasons. I think COVID lent into some of that. You know, we suddenly just shut down and couldn't meet. We certainly, as a church, things became tight because of the buildings we bought, because we bought this place, didn't we? And then we took over the Windsor warehouse and that. Do you want to comment on our finances? That caused some years of deficit?
Yeah, we've had nearly 4 years of finishing each year in a deficit and having to be really tight. But some of that was planned as we invested in this building and the Windsor building, but it probably went on for a little bit longer than we were hoping. So we did manage to finish last year with a very slight surplus, which was brilliant. But really the sense as we start 2026 was that it was a new season. It was almost like we were moving from winter to spring, and it was time to get ready for growth, to get ready for expansion. And certainly looking at that Isaiah prophecy, the sense is the expansion is going to come. You know, it talks about spreading to the left and the right, dispossessing nations, but you need to start preparing for that before it comes. And that's what we need to start doing as a community. So that's what we're going to focus on a little bit today, is just talking about how that's happened for us as a church, what we're planning on doing across the sites and wider, and how we're looking at to make that happen. Right.
Yeah. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
I think you know most about it. But we'll actually talk about things slightly tangential, and it was the Quiet Revival. Many of you remember early 2025, the Bible Society came out with this survey, a report called the Quiet Revival. And that was based on a YouGov survey, which suggested there'd been a significant increase in church attendance between 2018 and 2024. And particularly amongst 18 to 24-year-olds, there'd been, an even bigger increase than amongst the general population. And that report caused a lot of excitement in the Christian world. And a lot of people were saying, hey, this is an indication of that revival's already begun, that we're already seeing this expansion that God is bringing. And we need to, it's already happening. And we need to, it's been quiet, it hasn't been noisy, but we need to get ready and prepare for it. And I guess many people will have seen the report a couple of weeks ago in the press to say actually that YouGov, the polling company who'd produced the data that was based on, have basically said a whole load of people have fraudulently filled in those reports. And actually the data can't be relied on. And the Bible Society has since retracted the report. And I've had a couple of people ask me, does that really nullify what I sensed and what we sensed God was doing at the beginning of the year? Were we basing it on that Quiet Revival report? And should we now be like repositioning ourselves going, well, this isn't happening. And, let's just go back to it being winter. And I just wanted to comment on that a little bit. I think, Callum, you would have heard me say a number of times, part of me was quite sceptical about the figures.
Yeah.
Just as I talked around other church leaders, obviously we know lots of other church leaders around the UK. And as you talk to people, you were going like, well, have you seen a 50% increase in attendance between those two dates? And I couldn't really find anyone who'd seen that sort of, one or two people sort of in cities and university type settings. But across the board, people had individual stories of young people coming to faith and turning up at church without any introduction. But there wasn't really a sense of this is happening. And certainly if you looked at the stats for the Catholic Church and the Church of England, they'd seen decline over those years. So it was hard for me reading the report going like, where are all these people?
Yeah.
If they're not in mainstream Anglican Catholic churches, where are these other churches that are growing so massively to account for all that growth?
Yeah.
So I think I'd always looked at the report with a little bit of scepticism, but also felt, no, we are in a different season. And that wasn't ever really based on the Quiet Revival report. I think one thing is just understanding how much the culture's changed. And that hasn't just been in the last month or the last year or whatever. It's been over 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And you'd be too young to remember. But I still remember back to the sort of turn of the century when people like Richard Dawkins were at their prime. And sort of new atheism was just everything. They were filling stadiums and selling millions of books. And it just felt like actually to be a Christian was just, you're a bit of an idiot, really. Within society, it was frowned on. It wasn't taken seriously.
Yeah.
You were out on the fringes. You were on the edges. And I think if you look at the last 30 years, that position has massively changed. And people saw that new atheism really didn't have anything to offer. It was very empty. Its message really was that just there isn't a God, but there was no hope. There was no meaning. There was no purpose in it. And I think, we would both see just all through society, there are so many people now owning Christ.
Yeah.
You're seeing Premier League footballers, taking off their shirts and it's like, God is great. And, lots of examples of that. Philosophers, many of those new atheists, or at least a number of them now coming to faith in Christ. And just the whole temperature has changed. See us as a church working with like local authorities. And they just want to work with us now, whereas 30 years ago, they didn't want anything to do with us as a community. I don't know if any of that would resonate with you.
Yeah, I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking of two things that I've seen personally, maybe over the last 6 months. So one would be just when I speak to people, friends or new friends I'm meeting, it used to be a bit of a taboo of what you would say of whether I'm talking about going to church or even the fact that I talk about how I work at church. And I've noticed definitely in the last 6 months much more that prompts questions rather than people either not wanting to follow up at all or think you're completely crazy and not wanting to talk to you again. And, we've had some invite events over at the Farnborough site and it's certainly been a lot easier to invite people to. People have been a lot more open. And I think the other thing I've seen is, I know that you've recently watched, as I have, the BBC Pilgrimage programme, which I really recommend to anyone. There's many series on it, but the latest ones, it's a really good way of getting a bit of a snapshot of the temperature of how people are viewing Christianity. And on that programme, you've got people from all different backgrounds. But actually, there's just, even amongst the people who aren't believers, there's a real curiosity and respect and actually seeing the power of things like Bible passages, things that sometimes we can take for a little bit for granted, and seeing how powerful it is to non-believers.
Yeah.
So those are two really tangible things I've seen in the last couple of months.
Yeah, and I think undoubtedly, over a long period, but I think accelerating that environment has changed. The culture is changing. I think we're seeing growth as a church. So all of our sites are growing, more people coming. We're seeing salvations on a regular basis. There's definitely been a boom in Bible sales. Has been one of the really interesting stats of, it's definitely happened. There's growing numbers of Bibles being sold, particularly to young people who are, we think they're addicted to their phones, but they're buying physical Bibles and reading them and wanting people to explain them to them.
Yeah, can I just jump in there as well? So I serve on the youth team over here in Farnborough, and we've noticed when we're asking people to find Bible passages, they're actually racing to the pile of Bibles in the corner rather than getting their phone.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
And I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but a story we've had in Bracknell is Scylla, who's leading the Bracknell youth team over there. They recently had a really successful youth alpha, and I think they had over 100 people attending at one point. So they wanted to gift them 100 Bibles at the end. And the reports from the team is that when they gave these kids these Bibles, they were really cared for. You know, they were writing their name neatly on the front of them, but carrying them carefully, taking them home carefully, and like a real excitement about getting that. And I remember at school probably being given a Gideon's Bible.
I was given one of those tiny little red thing.
And I can tell you they were not treated as well as what we've seen recently.
No, so I do, you know, yes, it's disappointing in one sense that the Quiet Revival stuff, and I feel for the Bible Society, but actually they brought out a new report recently which is looking at a lot of the other evidence, which is really interesting if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
So I do really strongly believe we're in a new season, and we need to lead as we're in a new season and react as a church as we're in a new season and lengthen and strengthen. So that'll be interesting just to talk about the sites and what's going on around the sites. Yeah. So why don't we start here in Farnborough, seeing as we're sat in this beautiful room.
Yeah.
And we're looking to do some stuff to strengthen this site and lengthen it. Strengthening, one of the big problems on the site here is that it's absolutely freezing in the winter. And anyone who's been here in the winter, like everyone's got their hats and coats and wrapped up, you know, it literally is just a few degrees in here.
Yeah.
And just tell us a bit about what we're going to do to alleviate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not been a comfortable winter for us over here. So we've been looking at, how do we long-term heat the building here? And actually just generally with the redevelopment of the Farnborough, we are trying to do things to how we want them to be long-term. So we're thinking, you know, not how do we get through another winter, but okay, what is the long-term solution for the next 15, 20 years here? We've worked with various consultants, and, you know, the short answer is it's underfloor heating in the auditorium, which is, we've had great success with in the Kerith Centre. It's kept that room really toasty for many, many years, and it's just the best option for a large open space, particularly a space which is used for a very short amount of time, as like a Sunday morning, and may sit dormant for a couple of days after. And then we're really passionate over here, sustainability. We're always looking to make positive choices. So we're going to power it with an air source heat pump.
Brilliant.
And then we've got ambitions in the future, adding solar in to bring it as energy and carbon efficient as possible. So that's how we're going to be bringing the heating back to this building.
And that should be happening this summer?
This summer.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. And as part of that, we're also going to turn the auditorium around, aren't we? So we're going to turn it, a bit like we did in Windsor, turn it through 90 degrees and get it in what we think is going to be its final configuration. Yeah,
again, with that long-term vision, we could have put it back as it was, but our poor production manager, Josh, has got to empty the room in order to install the underfloor heating. So instead of having to move it twice, we're going to rotate it, which is part of the final design that we've done. Which will allow a bit of extra seating. It shortens the distance from front to back. We're always trying to make the room as engaging as possible. So it will aid that. And again, as we look at flow for the whole building, where the kids' rooms are, where the coffee points are, it just makes a lot more sense to be that way around. So we'll make that move at the same time.
Brilliant. And then one of the other brilliant problems we have here in Farnborough is just the lack of space for kids and youth, isn't it? We've just seen an explosion.
Indeed.
Kelly has done a brilliant job amongst those groups. And we want to make more space for them. So tell us what we're going to do around that.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of rooms that are working really well, but it is just more space. So we sit in one of them, but upstairs in this area, we've got 3 rooms, a slightly smaller office, to be honest, but then 2 sort of classroom size. There's a wall just to my right here that's going to be knocked through. So this will open up 2 additional rooms that we've never had use of, which could give us capacity for about another 40 or 50 people. We think they're going to be for the young people. It will enable them to split the age groups and just be able to deliver teaching and content that slightly works better for the ages and the discussions of what's going on in the lives of the young people. This is new space. We haven't had it before. It's going to give us that extra capacity. I'm looking forward to being up here.
It will be good, won't it?
It will be.
And all of that is going to cost around $500,000.
Yeah.
Right? We're just about to go out to tender, aren't we? So we're not quite sure. We'll know once we get that back.
Yeah.
But one of the risk things that we're doing this year, we've got about $250,000 that's been raised by the site, which is amazing. But we're just going to go for it.
We are, yeah.
And believing the money's going to come in. If it doesn't, we'll take out a loan. But we want to do this work now.
Yeah.
Because we want to get ready for what's coming. We want to lengthen and strengthen now.
Yeah, and we really feel that the limitations of the comfort levels of the auditorium, and if we have to start turning youth and kids away, that's going to be a real limitation to the site.
Yeah.
And it's going to stop us in achieving the things we want to achieve long term. So, yeah, we're going in faith that the money's going to come, but it feels like it's for the right reasons. It's to enable us to continue this level of growth we're seeing here.
Yeah, and that's probably a decision we might not have made a year ago, but part of this new mentality of wanting to provide the space now and step out is just going, well, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Cool, and just lots of other exciting stuff happening on the site here. And the pantry, which is running, is going from strength to strength.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody who part of the pantry got saved on Easter Sunday, which is so exciting. And just want to talk to us about what's going to happen over the summer while the work's being done. Yeah. There's going to be a period of time we're not able to meet here, isn't there? Yeah.
So it's sort of going to happen in two sections. So the priority is to get the auditorium done and get that reopened as quick as possible. Now, it involves clearing the whole auditorium. There's, I don't know how many metres of underfloor heating, a lot, to be laid, and then re-concrete to be laid. That's got to dry, carpet's got to go down. So we are going to lose that for a number of weeks. We think somewhere around 4 weeks, but I must stress we don't know for certain yet. Yeah. We think it's going to be around that by the time we've emptied it, and also then put everything back again. Yeah. So the priority is to get that done as soon as possible and to reduce the amount of time that is closed. But we are going to have a closure in Farnborough. We're trying to make it coincide with the summer holidays. So we're working with starting around the 13th of July. So the last Sunday would be on the 12th. But we'll confirm that as and when. But we hope to race through that towards the end of the summer holidays, towards late August. Hopefully we'll have at least the auditorium back open for the Sundays. And then this part of the building we're in, although it looks fairly simple, these rooms, it's not. There's a lot of structural changes we've got to put in. There's a lot of infrastructure, power, lighting, electrics all need redoing. So there's quite a lot of work under the surface. So we think that could be anything up to an additional 8 weeks. So they've got the 4 weeks for the auditorium. They'll work on this at the same time, and then another 8 weeks, which will probably lead us into sort of mid to late September. But at the moment, we hope that will just mean this part of the building is out of bounds. Yeah. So it's going to affect some of our midweek ministry. They're looking at how they're going to adapt, other ways of doing it, whether they move to different locations. But yeah, so we hope this whole phase 1 project will be completed towards the end of September, ready for the winter.
Yeah, which is great. So by the end of this year, both of these projects should be done. We'll be toasty, we'll have space for youth.
That's the plan.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's move on to the Isle of Wight. So many of you will know the Isle of Wight moved from West Wight to Newport in the centre of the island. And that was really Dan's heart to reach, Dan Wells, who leads the site, his heart to reach young families, to reach teenagers, to reach young adults. And initially the site took a bit of a hit because of that. Numerically, a number of people chose to stay in West Wight. But actually what we've seen is the site growing back. And we've just taken on a really exciting appointment in West Wight, which is to take on Chris Redcliffe as our assistant site pastor, working alongside Dan, which is really exciting.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And if you don't know Chris, he is a brilliant guy. For many years, he's co-led Youth for Christ on the island. He's just got an incredible reputation across the island, leading this big team that works into schools and young people. And he's going to be with us 2 days a week, carrying on with Youth for Christ. And that's going to so strengthen us in all the areas that we want to be involved in there. And just exciting what's happening there.
Yeah, he's also a very quick runner. He could be Kerith's quickest runner.
He could be, yeah. We won't take him on. And they're just continuing to explore what they do on the islands. I know one of the things that churches are being encouraged to do at the moment is actually to run the Bible course, which I've led before and I know other people have led.
Yeah, I've led it as a small group.
Yeah, it's a really good course. And they've just actually relaunched the Bible course with fresh media, more diversity, more young people in it. Yeah. Andrew Ollerton, who does that. And they're going to run that course after Easter and open it up to anyone, with this realization that there's a growing interest in the Bible.
Great.
Lots of people with lots of questions around the Bible and how do you read it and what's the big story and how do I make sense of the difficult bits. And really exciting to see them just pushing into some of this stuff, new stuff that's happening with that. Okay, on to Windsor. And Windsor continues to be really exciting. I was there on Easter Sunday and it was just such a buzz. Standing room only at the back, as I think, all our mainland sites pretty much were.
Great to see.
One exciting thing that's been happening in Windsor is the cafe. And I know you were pretty involved in that. Leon had a heart to set up a cafe there and run it midweek, and that raised all sorts of questions, and we had lots of conversations, but actually it's going really well, isn't it?
Done brilliant. Angie and her team who run it midweek, just seeing it's so community focused. I think they've got a website and a Facebook page. If you're going to have a look, Ravine 17 in Windsor. Yeah. Every time I go over there, there's some sort of group, whether it be a sit-down dance group or they're learning something. Go and have a look at the full list. There's always something exciting happening over there. But they've done great. You get a great coffee. I think they've extended the opening hours over the last year. So they're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, so that's been great for getting the community in. One of the things we know is going to be a big issue around, if more people start coming, is discipleship. Like, how do we actually equip and train this group of people who are coming to us? We know a lot of that is going to happen, like one-on-one is going to happen organically, as just people who are in relationship with one another. But Leon's been piloting something in Windsor called the Catechumenate course.
Well done, you said that very well.
I know, I've been practicing that. And so it's a 2-year discipleship course, so it's pretty deep. Okay. And people get given Bible passages to study every week, and then they come together and look at those. And it's a rolling course, so the idea is that every term new people can start. I think they had about 10 or 11 people on the first term, and then they've got some more people starting this term.
Great.
And it's written by Jerry Sitzer. Some of you will remember Jerry Sitzer. He's the guy who wrote A Grace Disguised.
Okay.
He's the guy whose his mum, his wife, and one of his children were killed in a car crash. Yeah. And then he wrote this amazing book about the journey that they went on. And actually, Heather and Pocock and I did an interview with him. And at the end of it, he talked about this discipleship course. And out of that, we've sort of like become a pilot for it in Windsor, and Leon's taken that on, and that's really exciting. It's that opportunity to pioneer something on one site and think, well, if it works, we can take it onto the other sites. If this works in Windsor, well, why not adopt it everywhere? Because it's just a great way to bring new people in, and so that's really exciting.
Definitely.
I know Windsor are looking at 2 meetings, so we're 240 there on Easter Sunday.
Wow.
So they're looking at that for September or January. Okay. Just the pressure on numbers. Also, Leon's going on a sabbatical. So end of this month, he's going to have a 2-month sabbatical. He's done an amazing run. He's just done brilliantly there, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And, from planting the site, initially doing that unpaid and then working part-time and then coming full-time and doing a BA as well with WTC in the midst of that. And he's just done incredibly. And we really feel like he will benefit from a break. Yeah. So let's be praying for him. And then very recently, an exciting development, because again, we've run out of space in Windsor as we have here in Farnborough, and a new thing came up. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, the initial phone call wasn't that exciting. It was a bit worrying, but as the dust settles, it's really felt like an opportunity. So a lot of people won't know that we obviously rent the facilities at Windsor, particularly on the Fair Acres industrial estate side. And there's another unit on the back. It's attached to ours, but you wouldn't know it was there. It's tucked away in the corner. And we've had a glass company in there for many years. But before we took it on, they were already there. So it was all part of the contract we took on. But they've given notice and they've actually left already. All on good terms, all fine. But they had just been there year on year. And I think we sort of always expected them to be. So the shock is obviously that's a loss of income for us. But then quite quickly it felt like, well, we've been asking questions about them struggling with space as we have in Farnborough. Windsor have had the same thing, and there was no straightforward solution. It was hiring another building, but that is challenging safety wise, safeguarding wise, just logistics for newcomers knowing where on earth they're going. So I think quite quickly the team involved were thinking, well, maybe this is an opportunity. And as we talk about lengthening and strengthening, maybe last year we maybe wouldn't have been so keen to look at, well, maybe this is an opportunity. But just seeing how things have changed this year already, it felt like we should take stock and take time. So, there's been some amazing ideas, potentials. It kind of definitely leaning towards it being some sort of youth and kids space, if not something else as well. But very early days, but we are exploring how we get it there.
Just another one of those opportunities, isn't it, that's presenting itself, and I think we're just thinking a bit differently about it now because of the mentality we've got now. And exciting. And then we have Bracknell, and Bracknell continues to power ahead. A few really exciting things that have happened in Bracknell. You've already referenced the Youth Alpha that happened. And I think like 90 young people doing an Alpha course, and they expected about 20.
Amazing.
And suddenly just had these huge numbers, and young people not just turning up, but really hungry for what God had for them.
Yep.
And Silly's been there, just done an amazing job with them. We also had all the schools in the run-up to Easter, and I got to be part of that. So we had a whole Easter experience where kids wandered around and just experienced different parts of the Easter story, the Garden of Gethsemane and the upper room and all of those bits. And I think we had almost 400 kids from primary schools in the local area. 6 different schools came, and just brilliant to serve them.
What was your role?
I was trying to work out when one group had moved on, and then I could go and tell the next group that they could come around to the room that had finished.
You were working the logistics.
I was working logistics. I wasn't trusted as no acting or anything was involved. And, but just amazing, seeing not just these kids, but parents and teachers going around and just, hearing the Easter story in an interactive way, where they're actually sat in it, and then each place they did a little experience. So there was like a foot washing or a shoe cleaning section.
Okay, cool.
Or there's there's forgiveness. And you're just thinking about different things. So it's not just watching it. It's actually a bit like a prayer space in schools type thing.
Great.
So that was brilliant. We're also looking at employing a new kids worker. So Joe Foster is going to be stepping up to be our families lead, and that's ongoing at the moment. So that's a real thing for prayer.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a real opportunity. And there's another strengthening thing going on in Bracknell, isn't there, around the PA? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because that would be part of your...
Yeah, so, when was it? Last year now, when we redid all the lighting and the auditorium. That was...
Which is amazing, isn't it? Every time I go in there now, I'm like, this is so good.
Yeah, and one of the other exciting things about it is we track our energy use, and soon we'll be publishing our report from last year. But I can tell you, there's a big dip where the lighting gets switched over. So that was a brilliant project to get done. But this kind of the second stage was it. We knew the PA was getting on. Some parts of it are over 20 years old, and it's just so fundamental. I mean, it has served us incredibly. Like, the investment at the time was so worth it. I've been on staff for 10 years. I think I can think of one occasion where it hasn't worked. But even then, I think we've managed to get it up and working enough. And that's huge, especially in an auditorium of that size. You can't just shout. You need that amplification. So it served us so well. It has been hanging on by a thread, though, for a number of years. This isn't a recent thing. We've tried to service it and find parts, but we really have stretched it beyond its capabilities now. And then also, they're just seeing the auditorium being more full. And if anyone sits up in the balcony, it is a bit of a poor experience. It can sound very muffled. We just want it to be engaging. It's there not as a distraction, but to make it as easy as possible to engage. So Josh has been leading that project, our production manager I mentioned earlier. That is all booked in to happen in June. Yeah. We've conveniently got the works booked over a weekend where I think Bracknell's meeting in the park, church in the park again. Excellent. Which they did last year. So it's about a 2-week project, but it means it shouldn't interfere with any normal Sundays. Very excited to get that done.
Again, that's one of those stepping out things, isn't it? Because I think we've got about £85,000 in the Bracknell Building Fund. This is going to cost, I think, 145, something like that. So we're just believing for that to come in, and we'll bridge that shortfall if we don't have it, because we just want to get this done.
We do. We want this ticked off, move on to other things. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, let's shift gear a little bit. So onto finances. So subject very dear to both of our hearts in terms of just seeing church keep going. And certainly one of the things I spoke about in January that really felt we needed to strengthen, not just to be in a position that we're breaking even, but actually that we've got surplus to be able to do all these extra things that we're thinking and talking about. And it's just been an amazing start to the year, hasn't it?
Unbelievable.
Week by week, Tim Lathwaite, whoever sees all our finances, and it just keeps sending out emails saying, "Well, here we had another one-off gift, and here's the mid-month giving, and here's the end of," and it's just been remarkable. So, do you want to do the figures for giving year to date?
Absolutely. So, giving year to date, so that'll be to the end of March. We budgeted to receive in just over 307,000, but we've actually received 436,000. So that's just over £128,000 above budget, which I haven't seen anything like that. I think in March alone, I think giving was nearly £175,000 last time I saw. And thinking back to last year, I think for 11 out of 12 months we didn't hit budget. Interestingly, we did in December, and we've actually carried that forward. So we increased budget with just cost increasing. So it's not that we've lowered our expectations. If anything, we increased it and we're being expectant, but it's matched. So, regular giving at £325,000.
So that's exciting, isn't it? So it's not just one-off gifts, because we had a number of large one-off gifts this year, which has been amazing.
Yeah.
But actually the regular giving, just the background giving, has gone up significantly as well, which is really, really exciting, because long term that's what sustains us, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really important metric for us, is seeing what that regular giving's doing, because the large gifts, they are amazing. So a large gift we class as anything over £4,000 as in one gift. And those are brilliant, but they can be unpredictable. So over the last couple of years, we really didn't receive very many, which is fine, different circumstances and whatnot. But it's the regular giving which tends to be very predictable and consistent. So seeing that increase and continue to hold, it just gives us the confidence to go forth and do these things we've talked about. Yeah.
So that has been incredibly exciting. Then year to date, we budgeted to have a surplus of about £43,000. And actually, we've got a surplus of about 123, which again is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is we're just going to look at where this goes over the next few months. Is this an amazing thing for January to March, or hopefully this is something that we're going to sustain?
Yeah.
And then you'll do a re-budget sort of mid-year, won't you? And then just have a look at how do we begin to, if this is sustainable, how do we begin to actually invest some of the money that's coming in?
Yeah, it's. You talked about at the beginning about being a new season, and then that is, we haven't had the opportunity to think. It's always been like, okay, what do we need to just continue doing what we're doing? But actually shifting the mindset of being like, okay, we've now got opportunities, and so what are the really pressing things? I think, what we'll be praying for is the wisdom to be able to spot the things that God really wants us to invest in, not be distracted by other things. Be able to see where the fruit's going to be. But as I say, not going to rush into anything.
No.
It's been a really exciting first 3 months, but we're in here for the long haul. We want to make sure what we're seeing is going to be sustained. Don't want to be rushing into anything and then getting ourselves in a difficult position later on. But it's definitely exciting.
Yeah, and it does feel like a validation of what we set out with at the start of the year. You know, I think sometimes in God you step out and then God provides, isn't it? It'd be brilliant if it was the other way round. But often it's that leap of faith, isn't it? And it feels like we've seen that so far this year.
Yeah, it's weighing that up with the stewardship responsibilities that we have to make sure, we're not doing anything that would be seen as being overly ambitious. So balancing those two things, holding those two things.
Yeah. Cool. So just briefly mention, before we close, 2 more things which I think are both strengthening and lengthening us. One of them is 24/7 prayer. So many of you will know 24/7 prayer through Lectio and the prayer course and other things like that. We are formally going to become part of the 24/7 prayer communities network, which is a whole network of churches and houses of prayer and missional communities. And I think that is both going to strengthen us as a church, just the relationships we have. You know, there's just some brilliant people within 24/7 prayer that we as a team are just increasingly getting to know. And to have that group of people as our friends, as our connections, you know, for us to push deeper into a lot of those resources is going to be really powerful for us. But also lengthening us, it's giving us opportunities as a church to serve other churches. And, you know, we do that. Anyway, I know you were on the phone to another church yesterday about just helping them with some stuff. But to be able to do that on a more formal basis, as we're part of this English network of 24/7 churches and then involved more widely. Got an invite yesterday to go out to Germany and visit a church. You just think, it gives us an opportunity to have a bigger impact as a community and share what we've got. So that's exciting. And we'll be formally becoming part of that at the GB gathering, which is happening in Birmingham in May, 15th and 16th. So if anyone wants to join us for that, you'd be very welcome.
I'm there. Are you there?
I'm there. Yeah. I'm going to be there for the whole of that. And then finally, might seem a bit weird one, but you and I are both off to Lisbon next week, aren't we? Not on a couple's holiday or anything.
No.
You know, nothing weird like that.
No.
But for the last, this will be the 3rd one of these been to, there's a thing called the McClellan Foundation, which is an American trust fund, basically. And they fund Christian stuff. And one of their things that's on their heart is to improve Christian governance, how churches are run, how they're led. And we've been on a 3-week course with myself, Callum and Jeff Whitten. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's been one of the best things that I've been on. It's one of the things you go to, and we're surrounded by probably 100 organisations. I think about a third of churches, 2/3 maybe are just Christian non-profit organisations. So a bit of a mixture, and it's just 2 days of content thrown at you, and you sort of go I think when we first went last year, thinking, oh, we do governance fairly well. Like a lot of people come to us for advice and direction on governance, but this has just opened up a whole nother level. Not in a panic way, but in a like good and excellent could look like that, and what that could mean for strengthening us in different ways. So it's been really exciting, loads of challenging. We usually come back with a couple of action points that we have to get on with.
Working our way through.
That we work our way through, and then they come back and see how we're getting on. But yeah, really excited to spend another 2 days out with that level of teaching.
And I think just that strengthening all the things that underpin us as almost like the corporate side of our church is so important. And we've seen, time and again with churches when that goes wrong, it's just catastrophic, and we want to be really strong in those areas.
Yeah.
Okay, so in conclusion, we're going to bring this to a close now. It does really feel like we're in a new season. And I think, if you talk to people around the office, it would feel like there's a different thing happening now, isn't there? And we're just having to almost realign how we lead and how we think and the steps we're taking. And I just want to encourage everybody involved, listening to this Vision Cast, to get involved. We talked a lot about things that we're doing at a sort of central church level, but I want to say that everybody has a part to play.
Yeah.
And, we are a community. Our goal is to help people find their way back to God through communities growing in their love for God and love for people. And this thing's only going to happen as everybody plays their part. We're a body where only functions when everybody is doing what they're called to. And I just have 4 encouragements for all of us as we're thinking about this new season that we're in. And the first one, you've touched on it, is being open to sharing your faith. Just everywhere you are, in every social context. I know you go out with a bunch of guys on a Sunday night now, don't you? And
take the dogs to the pub.
And, a bunch of trades guys and just very different people to the people you normally mix with. But those opportunities to just, as Isaiah 61 says, share life, share faith, and share Jesus. And just be building those relationships. I had a wonderful story from Andy and Shari Barrett, who are both based here in Farnborough, and one of their neighbours got baptised at Easter. And who they've just been witnessing to for ages and ages.
Yeah, amazing.
And just came to faith. And all of us can be part of those stories. And I want to encourage all of us, whether you're at the shops or seeing your neighbours or seeing your family, share Jesus, because we are in a different season, as you said. Openness of people, willingness to listen, willingness to ask questions, intrigue that people have. Secondly, I would want to encourage a load of people to think about leading a small group. And I think there's a real need for us. We talked about discipleship, and to create those spaces where people can grow in their faith, whether that's leading a course like the Bible course or Freedom in Christ or, emotionally healthy spirituality, or whether that's just gathering a group of people and meeting together on a regular basis just to share faith and pray with one another. I sense we need a whole load of people who are going to step up and be willing to lead a small group and go, hey, I'll gather a group for a term in my home. And I'd really encourage you, if you think that's a possibility for you, talk to your site pastors, go online, there's a whole form that you can fill in to do that. But I sense we need a whole load of people willing to step out and create spaces for new people to feel like they're at home.
Right.
I want to encourage people to go deeper in prayer. It's so exciting for me that we're connected with 24/7 prayer, and if we're going to see this depth that we're looking for, I know my own life, I think in our lives, prayer is just so key to that. And we just need to up our game, when it comes to corporate prayer and individual prayer. And then finally, I want to encourage people to carry on giving. And you might hear the giving figures and think, I can stop. No, this is the moment for us to press in.
Yeah.
And I said a while back ago when we were at the beginning of this journey, Katrina and I said we're going to start double tithing. And we're continuing to do that because we want to continue to invest into what God's doing. And, for those of you who maybe were stirred by the giving series and thinking, maybe I'll start, I want to encourage you to start, whether that's just, just getting to regular giving or stepping up in another way. And for those who have stepped up, I want to encourage you, keep going, keep trusting God in this, because these resources are going to be so essential for us as we move forward. So anything you want to say in closing, Callum?
I don't think so. That was a great update. It's amazing how much happens in the first, because a lot of this has really evolved in the first 3 months of the year. So
it has, yeah. Lots of this we hadn't really anticipated.
Yeah, and I suspect when you sit down and do the next one in 3 months, all these things will have hopefully moved forward and new things will have come to the table. So it's very exciting in the life of Kerith at the moment.
Cool. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for listening. Well done for getting all the way through. It's so good to have you as part of us and with us. Think about those 4 ways that I talked about getting involved and engaged, and do one of those. And until the next time, it is great to be with you.